Welcome back. Welcome back. So I'm going to wait a minute or two for us to come into the room. So I'm just making sure that everything is copacetic here. Okay. All right. So, all right, great. I'm just going to go grab some water really quickly and then we will begin. It's 8:01. So essentially, what we're going to do today is we're going to continue where we left off yesterday. So I am going to essentially cover what we did or summarize what we did yesterday, and then we will move forward with the tasks for today. Okay, so I'm going to open up the data file. So today we're going to use the DAW8 2020 data file, and we're also, as always, going to use the data analysis workbook. Okay. So before I begin, does anyone have any questions? Okay. Does anyone have any questions from yesterday or from anything that we did? If you have, well, first of all, let's start with the basics. If you can hear me, please type in a Y. If you can hear me, please type in a Y. Okay. Okay, great. All right, Q&A. Okay, question from Darlene. All right. All right. Go ahead, Miss Darlene. You can come on and ask your question. Okay, let's try this. Okay. Go ahead. Can you see where I'm trying to invite you to be a presenter so that you can talk? All right. So while you're doing that, sure, go ahead. What's your question? All right. So it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 people can hear me. So I'm going to ask this again. If you can hear me, please type in a 1. If you can hear me, please type in a 1. Yes, on purpose of one-way ANOVA, it says assess differences in mean scores. Correct. So for a one-way ANOVA, if you have an independent, okay, great, excellent. Okay, I'm starting to see these ones now. Excellent. So with a one-way ANOVA, okay, if you have a category, an independent variable that has 3 or more categories, you would use a one-way ANOVA. If you had an independent variable that had only 2 categories, you would use an independent samples t-test. So for example, one of the variables that we had, let me just share my screen. One of the variables that we had was optimism among young, middle-aged, and older. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to look at whether or not there are significant mean score differences between or among the younger, middle-aged, and older participants. So essentially what you do is everyone from 18 to 29 has an optimism score. Everyone from 30 to 44 has an optimism score. Everyone who's 44 and older has an optimism score. So what you do is you take all the people with an optimism score who are 18 to 29, add them up, and then compute a mean score for that group. Same thing for the people from 30 to 44, add them up, compute a mean score. Same thing for those who are 44 and older. You add up all the mean scores for that group, and then you determine using the one-way ANOVA if there is a significant difference in the mean scores for the 18 to 29, 30 to 44, and 44 plus group. Does that make sense? If that makes sense, let me know. If it doesn't make sense, type in, if it makes sense, type in a Y. If it does not make sense, type in an N. Okay, great. Great. Are there any other questions? Okay. Are there any other questions? If someone has a question, just type in a Q. Okay. If at any time you have a question, just type in a Q. Okay. All right. So let's just summarize what we did. All right. So on day 1, this is day 2 of the data analysis workshop, day 2 of 7. All right. So on day 1, we did statistical test selection. So we reviewed descriptive questions, we reviewed differences questions, and we reviewed relationship questions, right? All right. Okay. So this is how you would do this. You would go through each one like so. Then what we did is we developed the null hypothesis for each research question. So what we did here is we assigned whether it was a relationship or a difference question, right? Then the second step was write your null hypothesis. And we wrote the null hypothesis. Age is not significantly related to optimism. Optimism and self-mastery are not significant predictors of perceived stress. And there is no significant difference in optimism among younger, 18 to 29, middle age, 30 to 44, and older, 44 participants. Okay. So we wrote the null hypothesis. All right. So we did that. So we checked that off. Then we determined the type of variable that were in these questions. And we said that because this was a relationship question, there is a bidirectional relationship. Whenever you ask whether variables are related to one another, there is no assumption of an antecedent variable, meaning one that precedes the other. They're bidirectional. They're occurring simultaneously. They're influencing each other. So in that case, everything is an independent variable. However, when we have prediction, the assumption is that one variable is impacting or influencing or explaining the other. So it's unidirectional. It's one way. So that's why we have the independent variable, which is influencing the dependent variable, which is perceived stress, right? So that's how we categorize that. And then with age, is there a difference in optimism among younger, middle age, and older participants? Age group, actually it was age group, right? It's not age, it's age group, was the independent variable, and optimism scores were the dependent variable, because we were under the belief that the age group that you were in is impacting your optimism scores. Maybe people who are younger have greater optimism than those who are older. We don't know. We'll have to see. All right. All right. So that was the third thing that we did, right? So then we went and we're going to check that off. Okay. And then the fourth thing we did is we said, hey, let's determine how these variables are measured. All right. So then we said, okay, now that we know the groupings, let's see how they're measured. And we said age, right? The age variable was continuous. Okay. The age variable was continuous. And what do we mean by that? Essentially, what we're saying here is that when we look at age, these are the individual ages, right? These are the individual ages. So that's why it's continuous and it's a ratio variable, all right? So age is continuous. Optimism scores, those were interval. Anytime you have a scale, and you have at least 4 categories, it's always going to be interval, okay? All right. A numeric scale is going to be interval, like a validated scale. A validated psychometric scale is going to be an interval variable, okay? All right. So these are all continuous. Life satisfaction scores, continuous. Mastery or self-mastery, continuous, and that's also an interval. All right. Then we come down to our optimism and self-mastery predictors of perceived stress. Again, optimism scores are interval, continuous. Mastery, self-mastery scores are also continuous interval, and perceived stress is also continuous interval. All right. I cover this, as I mentioned before, in the pre-workshop videos. Shine must be in 4 levels. Why not 3? Okay, the great question. That's a great question. Let me see if I can raise this up. Okay, now, because in one of the characteristics of an interval scale, okay, is that there should be a relatively normal distribution. Okay, you want it to have a relatively normal distribution. Okay, if a scale only has 3 options, it's very difficult for it to have a bell-shaped curve. Okay, it's very difficult to have a bell-shaped curve. That's one. The second thing is that the reliability of the scale tends to be lower when you have fewer options. In other words, the psychometric properties of the scale aren't as strong. They're not as predictive. Okay. So number one, it doesn't have the numeric characteristics of a numeric scale when it only has 3, because it functions more as a categorical variable as opposed to a continuous numeric variable. Does that make sense? If it makes sense, type in a 1. If it doesn't make sense, type in a 0. Oh, the Word document in full page view. Okay. You mean like this? Is this better? Okay, great. Because again, you have categorical variables and then you have continuous variables. Continuous variables need to have a numeric characteristic, and numeric characteristics, you want them to have a relatively normal distribution. When you have fewer than 4 categories, it's hard to have a bell-shaped curve. You get these, you get it's like you get these posts. Let me draw something here. You get these bars where it's like, oh, this thing is awful. I can't use this. This whiteboard is awful. Okay. Let me try the other one. All right. This is going to be better. Okay. So when you have a numeric scale and you have a 1, a 2, a 3, and a 4, the numeric nature of the scale tends to be something like this. This is ideal. But when you have a scale that's 1, 2, 3, it tends to be very boxy. You don't want that. You want something that's a little bit more smooth. That's why you want to have at least 4 for psychometric properties. Okay. All right. And then you can, one of the references for that is Field. Andy Field talks about that when he talks about scales and measuring scales. So his book, I think it's on SPSS or statistics or something like that. Andy Field 2018. Another book that talks about the scales is Tabachnik and Fadal. It's also on statistics. Tabachnik and Fadal. Matter of fact, I think they're actually, the references are actually in the workbook. They're actually in the workbook. Here we go. Tabachnik and Fadal. And Hare as well. Multivariate data analysis. So you can use these references as well as Andy Field. I have some other references in here too. All right. All right. So then after we did that, then what we did is now we have all the information we need. Okay. So now we went through and we said, hey, which statistical test should we run? And we went through and we did process of elimination. And we basically said, hey, the ones that we should use are as follows. To answer the research question, is age related to optimism, life satisfaction, and perceived stress and self-mastery? We want to use a bivariate correlation. Yes, it is a wonderful book. It is a wonderful book. Are optimism and self-mastery predictors of perceived stress? We're going to use a multiple regression. And for the third research question, we're going to use a one-way ANOVA. Is there a difference in optimism among younger 18 to 29, 30 to 44, and older participants? Okay. All right. So that was stage one. Now, if we go back, see all the things in purple we've done successfully. Okay. These are all related to the test selection phase. All the things in purple are related to the test selection phase. Now what we're going to do is the data preparation phase. And in the data preparation phase, we're going to first enter the data into SPSS. Okay, that's already done. There is a video in the pre-workshop area on how to enter data into SPSS. So I have that there. If you don't see it, I'll check tonight to make sure it's there. And if it's not there, I'll put it there. And then we have checking the data for errors. And we're going to walk through all of these steps. Okay. So essentially with that, what we're going to do is we're going to run frequencies on all the data and then determine, okay, which ones are errors. Okay. Which ones are errors, and then which ones are missing. And then I'm going to show you what to do to fix those. Then we'll recode variables and then we'll compute new variables. This process right here is going to take 2 days. We're going to work on it today and we're going to work on it tomorrow. All right. All right. So let's begin. So if we go here, questionnaire code book. All right. So these are the variables in the data file. Okay. We've got sex, where 1 is males, 2 is females. Age is numeric in years. Marital status is single, steady relationship, living with partner, and so on and so forth. Children is yes or no, highest level of education, primary, some secondary, so on and so forth. Then we got major source of stress, right? Work, spouse. This is a multiple select, meaning you can select more than one. Do you smoke? Yes. Cigarettes smoked per week. Okay. Now, this question right here, and I'll get into it in more detail once we analyze the data, is a conditional question, meaning you don't get this question right here. Let me see if I can highlight it. you don't get this question here. Oops. You don't get this question here unless you answer yes for this question. So there are going to be a lot of people who don't have an answer for smoke numb because this is what we call a conditional question. So you have to be very careful when it comes to those questions. Then you got the optimism scale, mastery scale, life satisfaction scale, and perceived stress scale. All right. All right. Is everyone with me? If you're with me, type in a Y. If you have a question, type in a Q. Okay, great. Great. All right. So, what we're going to do now is we're going to have our workbook and we're going to check our data for errors, missing values. All right. All right. So, it says here, open your data file, screen and clean data for missing values. Perform frequencies on all data, but only list variables below with missing and or data errors. SPSS does the following. In SPSS, do the following. That's what it says. Analyze descriptive statistic frequencies. Analyze descriptives and then frequencies. Okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to highlight everything from sex all the way down to perceived stress 10. Okay? Now, ID is an arbitrary identifier given to each respondent. This is a very important variable because what it does is it connects the respondent with the ID number in the original questionnaire. So if your questionnaire, the questionnaire for this person, whether it's paper or online, is going to be 415. Because the reason that's important is because if we want to check if there's an error, we need to go back to the original data source to check if there's an error. So if ID 415, we think there's an error, we need to go back to ID 415 either online or someplace else on the paper survey and check to see if there is an error. So do you understand the importance of having an ID number in your data file and the same ID on your survey? If you understand the importance of that, type in a 1. If that doesn't make sense, type in a 0. Okay, great. All right. So now what we're doing is, it says here, analyze descriptive frequencies. Analyze descriptives and then frequencies. So we're going to highlight sex, hold down the shift key, scroll down, and then click on PSS. Then we're going to move this over to variables. Okay. And then we could click OK, but we're going to click paste. And the reason why we're going to click paste is because we're going to put everything in the syntax file. And the syntax file is a written record of everything that we've done. Okay? So I'm going to put my cursor at the top, and I'm going to put asterisk. I'm put 3 asterisks. If you put an asterisk in the syntax file, it tells SPSS that this is a note, right? That it is a note and that it should be ignored from an analysis standpoint. So we're going to put, let's see, round 1. Check for missing values. Okay? So we highlight this and we run it. Okay? And then we get the output. Now, this is the output. So what we're looking for is we're looking for the variable with the highest number. Okay? We're looking for the variable with the highest number missing. So in the top row, this is the number of valid responses for each question. So for sex, 439 people had a valid response or had a response. We'll have to see whether or not it's valid. And 0 were missing. Age, 439 people had a value for age. Marital status, 439, no missing. Child, how many children, or whether you have children, yes or no, 438 answered that question. There was 1 person missing. Let me grab some water real quick. All right. So for highest education completed, 439 people had a response. Source of stress, 422 people had a response, and 17 did not respond to that question. For smokers, we had 436 people respond to that question, and 3 did not respond. Cigarette smoke per week, 360 respond to that question, and 79 didn't. Now, as we saw previously, this is a conditional question, right? Remember we looked at this and we saw that this was a conditional question. Because remember, we saw smoke per week, number of cigarettes smoked per week. You only got this question if you said yes to do you smoke, okay? That's why this number is so high. These people, 79, said no. Generally, they said no, okay? And we can go and check that. So what we're doing is we're going through all of these and we're saying, okay, what is the highest number of missing for non-conditional questions? So this is a conditional question. So source of stress is the highest. So what we do in our code book, we state cigarette smoke per week. There were 79 people who had missing values and 360 who had valid values. All right. And we say non-conditional question. We did not take any action because it is a conditional question, therefore not included in missing value analysis. Okay. Not included in missing value analysis. If that makes sense, type in a Y. We did not include it because it is a conditional question. Everyone didn't get the question, so we can include it in our missing value analysis. If that makes sense, type in a Y. You only got this question if you said yes. All right. All right. All right, great. Now, so the second highest is source of stress. So we're going to type in source of stress. And we're going to say 422.17. So 17 missing, 422 valid. All right. So then what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at this. We're going to go take a look at this source of stress 17. Okay. Source of stress. So we got 17 missing. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to SPSS. Okay. And we say, hey, we're going to go to source of stress. Okay. We're going to sort ascending. So that means that all of the missing values are going to be at the top. Okay. Whenever you're doing a missing value analysis, you want to sort ascending. You're doing it one variable at a time, and you're going to sort ascending because you want all of your missing values at the top where you can see them. Okay. So these are all the people who have missing values. Okay. So what you would do is for each respondent, ID 24, ID 66, 139, 236, you would go back to the original data source and you would say, okay, did something happen in the transfer? Are we missing something, or did they not answer the question in the original source? Okay. Now, if you did an online survey, okay, and you had the questions set up in such a way where people had to respond, in other words, mandatory, you shouldn't see these missing spaces. But if your responses were not mandatory, then you may see these missing cases. Okay. So if we went back to the data source and we say, hey, these are all missing from the original data source, that means that we want to remove these people or exclude these people. Okay, we want to exclude them. Why is that? The reason is we want everyone in our analysis to have complete data. We want everyone in our analysis to have complete data. In other words, when we're running a one-way ANOVA, the multiple regression, and the bivariate correlation, we want the same people in all three of those analyses. We don't want one analysis to have a certain number of people. So if we go to our data file, we've got a total of 439 people. We don't want 420 people in one analysis and then 370 in another analysis, and then 302 in another analysis. We want them all to have the same N, all of our analysis to have the same N. If that makes sense, type in a 1. If it doesn't make sense, type in a 0. Okay. And the reason why you want them all to have the same N is because you don't want someone to say, well, maybe the reason why your results are different is because you had different people in the different analyses. But if you have the same people in all of your analyses, they can't say that. Okay. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, hey, we have to remove these people. So how do we do that? We go to select cases. Okay. Then we go to if condition. And then we say missing. And the variable that we're looking for is source of stress. Now, what we are interested in is not missing. So what we're telling SPSS to do is, hey, we want you to select for this analysis all the variables that are not missing. That's what it means. Select all the variables in source, all the respondents in source who do not have a missing source number. Select all the respondents in the data file who do not have a missing source of stress number. So we click continue. Again, we're clicking paste because we want a written record of everything we've done. So we're going to go up here and say remove missing or select non-missing respondents or select respondents with no missing data for source of stress. And we're going to save this. And this is syntax. We're going to call this data analysis work syntax. Okay. And the reason why we keep this is because we can always go back to it and see exactly what we've done. If we messed up, then we can always go back and, and rerun things. Okay. All right. Now, another thing you want to do when you're running data analysis, you always want to protect the original integrity of your data. Okay? You always want to protect the original integrity of your data. So this is our original data file. So before we do anything to this data file, we're going to create what we call a work file. So the work file is the data file where we're going to perform all of our analysis, delete respondents, all of that other stuff. And we use a work file because if we ever mess up in the work file, we can always go back to the original file and then fix it using the syntax. Okay? If that makes sense, type in a Y. If it does not make sense, type in an N. Okay, great. So what we're going to do is we're going to save this as work2 underscore work2. Okay? Now, we're going to go to our syntax and we're going to highlight this just to make sure that it's going to select for the data file all the people who have a valid or who have a data point for a source of stress. So we're going to click this and we're going to run it. And then we'll open the data file. And here we see that it has excluded everyone who has a missing value for a source of stress. Okay? So you want to test it first. And it worked like we wanted it to. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go back to data, select cases, and then what we're going to do is we're going to say delete unselected cases because we wanted to check the code first just to make sure it was right. Now what we're going to tell SPSS, now we're going to delete all of these cases that have a slash through them. So we click paste because we never run it from the menu, okay? We run it from the syntax because we want to have a written record of everything we've done. So now what we're going to do is going to put in this asterisk and we're going to say remove respondents with missing value for source of stress. Okay, then we're going to save it. We're going to highlight this and we're going to run it. And then we're going to go back and we see that source of stress no longer has any missing values. All the ones that were missing are now gone. If you are with me, type a 1. If you are not with me, type in a 0. What we did is we first highlighted them to make sure that we were highlighting the ones that were missing. And then once we highlighted them, we deleted them because we don't want people in our data file or in our analysis who have missing data. Okay? Does anyone have a question? If you have a question, type in a Q. If you don't have a question, type in an N. Okay? That's what we did. We removed 17 missing cases. Okay? That's what we did. So that's round one. Now we're going to go to round two. And round two is going back to the syntax file, highlighting this, because we're going to rerun everything. But this time it's going to be round two. Okay? And then what we're going to do is, I always like to start with a clean slate. So I'm going to go up here to output. It highlights everything, and then I'm going to delete. And then I'm going to go back to the syntax. And then I'm going to go down and I'm going to highlight it. And I'm going to run it. And we're going to see which has the highest missing value. Which has the highest missing value. 0, 0, 1, 2, 73. That's conditional, so that's excluded. 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. All these threes, and then we've got some fives. Okay, these are all fives. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go to the data file under perceived stress 1, and we're going to sort ascending on this question. So we're going to go to our data file, perceived stress 1, PSS 1, and we're going to right click and then sort ascending. And look at here. All these people have the same missing on each question. So essentially what happened is they got to this point and they were probably like, I'm not filling out this questionnaire. I don't know how long this is going to take, blah, blah, blah. That's why whenever you're doing a survey, you want to have the percentage complete at the top so that the people know how far they are from the finish, so they just don't give up. Okay? So just keep that in mind. Now, so again, we're looking at 5 missing. So there are 5 missing. So 155, 277, 520, 364, 26. These are the people who are missing. Okay? These are the people who are missing. So you go back to the original data source. If it's a paper, and you check. You go look at the paper survey and you look, okay, perceived stress question 1, is it missing? Did they leave it blank? If it's not, then you put the value in. Perceived stress question 2, is it blank? If it's not, then you put it in. If it's missing, then it's missing. We're going to assume that it's missing on the original data source. So then what we do is we do what we did before. We go to data, select cases, right? Click on if, and instead of saying source, we're saying perceived stress 1. Okay? So what we want to do is we want to include in our analysis everyone who does not have a missing value for PSS. In other words, everyone who has a missing value is going to have an X through it. Okay? It's going to have an X or a line through it. So click continue, click paste, and then now you got to be careful. This is a good example. What we didn't do, the first thing you want to do is you want to check it first, then you select it. But what we did is we weren't paying attention. I wasn't paying attention. So if I was to run this, it would just delete it before I checked it. So what I'm going to do is this is not right. So I'm going to delete this. I'm going to go back to select cases. And then I'm going to say filter out instead of delete, because you want to test the filter first before you delete it. If that makes sense, type in a 1. If it doesn't make sense, type in a 0. You always want to check something before you make a major deletion. Okay? We're going to filter it out first, make sure the filter is selecting what we want, and then we delete it once we know that the filter is working. Okay? So essentially what I did is I had originally, oops. So let me just do this. So what I did in the original step, this is what we call a filter. So we just filtered it at first so we could see that the missing values were being eliminated, right? They were being crossed out. We always want to check the filter before we delete. But down here, we didn't have a filter. We were just saying delete because I didn't uncheck the button. So what I have to do is you have to go back, select cases, right? You're going to go to missing. We're going to go to perceived stress, because if you select PSS1, you're going to also get PSS2, 3, 4, and 5 because they're all the same people that are missing. And then we're going to put in this little squiggly line right here. It says ampersand, which tells us, hey, we want to cross out the ones that are missing. So we're going to click paste. Make sure it's unfiltered. Click paste. And then we're going to highlight it, and then we're going to run it. And then we're going to test. There it is. So all the 5 that have missing PSS have been selected. Again, you want to test it first before you test the filter before you delete the data. Okay? You test the filter before you delete the data. So then we would go back, select cases, change it from filter to delete, click paste, right? And then now we have this, right? So remove. Respondents with missing values for perceived stress. PSS 1 through PSS 5. Select respondents with no missing data for PSS 1. Okay. If you are with me thus far, type in a Y. If you have a question or something's not clear, type in an N. If you're with me thus far, type in a Y. If you're not with me, type in an N. It's okay. It's okay. I'm here to help. I want to make sure everybody understands. Okay, great. 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 So the step is find the highest number that is non-conditional question. Check that number from the original data source. If the data source is missing, select the filter first, apply the filter, make sure you're only selecting the missing values, and then delete them. Okay, that's the process. All right, so let's do one more tonight, and this is going to be round 3. So let's go back here. So let's see. So this one was P perceived stress. There were 5 missing. All right, let's go back here. So we saw perceived stress. So I always want to keep this in our book. So we had PSS 1 all the way to PSS 10. Wait a minute. PSS. Oh, it's PSS 1 through 10. Okay, so that's what it was. So we're going to go here. Perceived stress 1 through 10 had missing 417 to 5. So there were 5 missing and there were 417 valid. And what did we say? We removed 5 respondents. Remove 5 missing cases from PSS 1 to PSS 10. Okay. All right. So now we go to, so again, we go up here, start with a clean. Every round, we're going to start with a clean slate. Okay. Every round, we start with a clean slate. So then we highlight this. This is round 3. And we go back to the top. 001 272 000000000. Okay, so the highest one looks like smoker. Okay, so smoker has 2. So in other words, do you smoke? Yes or no? 415 and 2. So we're going to go here. So we're going to go smoker. 2 415 2 415. See, the thing about it is, if you approach this in a methodical way, it's very easy to do. Okay, that's why I created this workbook, because if you follow the instructions, you can analyze your data in a very systematic way, and you can go through it and you know exactly what you did. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to smoker. Oh wait, we didn't run the filter. Make sure that's cleaned up. Okay, great. All right, so we did that. So okay, so now we've got that. So now we're going to go to smoker, right? And then we're going to go to smoke, and we're going to sort ascending. So then we've got the 2 missing here. Respondent number 55 and respondent number 253. All right. Now, so let's say we assume that we checked it in the original data source and they're missing. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to data, select cases, if condition, and then instead of PSS1, we're going to put smoke. Okay. Click continue. We're going to go to filter. Make sure it's on filter. We're going to click paste. Okay. And then what we're saying is we're going to select our respondents with no missing data for smoke. Okay. We're going to highlight it and run it. All right. I'm going to go back. Now, so when we say select cases, that means select the cases that are going to be included in the analysis. That's what select cases mean. Select the cases that are going to be included in the analysis. So these two missing are not going to be included in the analysis. Okay? So now what we're going to do, if that makes sense, type in a 1. If it doesn't make sense, type in an N. Okay, great. So now what we're going to do is we're going to delete these two that are missing. So we go to select cases. We go to if condition. Everything is fine. And then we change this from filter to delete. We click paste. Now, let me show you something. If you put the note right above the syntax and you don't have a space between the note and the syntax, it will think that the next line is also a comment. You don't want that. You always want to have at least one space above the syntax. Okay? If that makes sense, type in a Y. If it doesn't make sense, type in an N. You do not want to have an empty space. You want to have at least a space so that SPSS knows that the top is not also a comment, because it just deletes it and it won't run. Okay. Okay. All right. So now what we're going to do is going to highlight this and we're going to run it, and we're going to look over here, right? Look over here, right here, and we're going to run it, and then we're going to go back and it's gone. Okay. And it's gone. All right. So that's where we're going to stop for tonight, because it's 9:08 and I don't want to take you all too far past 9 o'clock. But we will continue this tomorrow. Okay. We will continue this tomorrow. All right. And then, so we will continue with this process and we will continue with phase 2. Like I said, phase 2 is going to take about 2 days. Okay. Phase 2 is going to take about 2 days. All right. Does anyone have any questions? If you have a question, please type in a Q. If you don't have a question, type in an N. Okay. Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do really quickly is I'm going to give you a quick quiz really quickly. It's anonymous. I'm going to give you 3 questions, and I want you to answer these questions. So the first one is going to be, how clear was the presentation of this material on a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is not at all clear and 5 is extremely clear? That's the first one. So I'm going to give you a few, like a minute or so to answer that, and then I'm going to do another one. Okay. All right. All right. Okay, so this helps me. This helps me. Okay, this helps me. All right. So now let's see, I have another one. Uh, okay, that helps me. Now there's another quiz. All right. Okay. All right. So that's helpful. I have another one here, but I don't know how to. Let me do something. Okay. So here's another one. Super quick. Oh, another question. I need to purchase the workbook. Okay. All right. All right. Here. Let me do this really quick. Um, okay. All right. 1 second. Okay. So that's it for tonight. Candace. Um, so if you still, okay. 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 Great. 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 All right. Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. Okay. All right. And then for those who um, still need to get the book, let me do this really quickly. And then I will put this in the, I will put this in here, and then we will be all set. Okay. So there's a link to purchase the book. If you still need to purchase it, thank you so much. Christy Chambers. Okay, so you haven't gotten it yet. All right, so I'll look through that. I'll make sure you get it tonight. Okay, I'll send you the information. Anyone else? So there's the link. Okay, I will see you all tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Okay. Thank you for your attention and your time. I appreciate your participation. And again, if you have any questions, please let me know. I'm here to help. You can leverage me. I'm here to, help people. Okay. All right. Excellent. Excellent. Okay. So until then, yeah, you can do that with the same link. You can do that with the same link. The link that I gave you, you can do the workbook and the VIP. Okay. All right. So if you have any questions, please post them. If not, we will meet tomorrow. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, great. All right. So I'll see you all tomorrow. All the best.